Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs of Ridge. In today's video we're going to talk about symbols of rebellion, and specifically we're going to talk about symbols of rebellion during the American Revolution. And these symbols were so popular and they're so effective that we still see them flown and displayed today. But oftentimes people don't do the research. They don't understand what the actual meaning is behind these things. And that's what we're going to do here today, to show you that what was relevant 240 years ago is still relevant today. Let's get started. The first symbol that we're going to look at is a flag called the Sons of Liberty flag. And I guarantee that you've recognized this because it's actually, in one form or another, a part of our United States flag. What you're going to look for in this picture is, I want you to count how many stripes there are. So what you should have noticed there is that the red and white stripes were vertical rather than horizontal. And also there are only 9 of them as opposed to 13. The reason for this is pretty simple. You know, the Sons of Liberty were a pretty important group of people during the American Revolution, specifically in Boston, although they had members all across the country, but they were mainly based in Boston. The purpose of the Sons of Liberty was to protect colonists' rights, protect them from infringement of rights by the British. Another reason they existed was because they were protesting unjust taxes. But their main role was that protection of rights. And on that flag, if you'll notice, it's vertical red and white stripes, and there are 9 of them. Okay, and the reason there were 9 is because the predecessor to the Sons of Liberty were called the Loyal 9. Now, these guys were very famous, and I'm sure you'll recognize many of their members. These are we're talking about guys like Patrick Henry, and he was a Virginian. Yeah, I know, but he was still part of the Sons of Liberty. But guys in Boston like Sam Adams, John Hancock, Paul Revere, other guys like Dr. Joseph Warren, all these people were part of the Sons of Liberty. And their flag, it was, if you notice the stripes in the horizontal configuration, those were flown on our early naval ships. They were called the Navy Jack. And this part of the flag became part of the United States flag later on. The next symbol of rebellion that we're going to cover is called the Gadsden Flag. This one's famous. I can guarantee you that you guys have seen this all over the place, from one coast to the other. Yellow flag, coiled up rattlesnake, don't tread on me. This was invented by Christopher Gadsden in 1775. It was so popular that the Continental Marines adopted it as their flag and the motto, don't tread on me. Now, a lot of people out there understand that it's a rattlesnake, but oftentimes people don't realize that this rattlesnake was chosen for a very specific purpose. Benjamin Franklin was using the rattlesnake in his flags from the 1750s. So the rattlesnake, especially the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, which was common in the 13 colonies, there's a reason this was chosen. And Benjamin Franklin, to paraphrase him, there's a couple of reasons why he chose the rattlesnake as the symbol, especially the segmented snake, and then in the Gadsden snake it was chosen because for a couple of reasons. And I really hope that you listen to some of these reasons why. The rattlesnake was chosen, and Benjamin Franklin describes it as because of its eyes. The eyelids never close. The snake's eyes are always open. In other words, vigilant. So all of us were to remain vigilant. The colonists were to remain vigilant against any encroachments of freedom, any violations of our natural rights. The snake was also courageous. When it presses an attack, it goes through until the very end. It never surrenders. Another thing that's important about the snake is that it only attacks when it's stepped on. That's the wonderful thing about it, is these colonists, they weren't the ones that were preemptively ruining the British. The British came and tried to take their guns, tried to strip their rights away, tried to tax them into oblivion. So the colonists were the rattlesnakes in this case. And the last part about this that I really liked how Franklin describes it was that the snake, although its wound is small, it's very deadly. And they used the weapons that nature gave them, much like the colonists used the weapons that nature gave them as well. The last symbol of rebellion that we're going to look at is one that is not as commonly known in today's time, but during the time of the American Revolution would have most certainly been highly popular. This is what's called the pine tree flag. So when we look at this flag, there are 2 things that you obviously were witnessing. You saw the pine tree as a symbol, and then you saw the phrase, an appeal to heaven. Now there's very important connotations to both of these, and both of these things go deep within American history. Okay, the first thing about the pine tree. In the colonies, the pine tree was seen as a symbol against tyranny. It was seen as a symbol against unjust taxation. The pine tree is, a lot of times guys would have a sprig of this and they'd put it in their hat or they put it on their ear as a symbol, against tyranny, as a symbol of rebellion. This is a very important thing to remember in our history. The second thing that that you probably saw was the phrase "an appeal to heaven." This came from John Locke's second treatise on government. Oftentimes we wonder, oh man, like, okay, well, they're infringing on our rights. They're taking our rights away. Well, first we have to understand where our rights come from. Okay, I mean, this is where every one of our founding fathers believed that our rights came from the Creator. They believe that our rights came from God. Now, I know there's some smart people out there, really academic and intellectual, that think, oh, belief in God, that's a stupid fairy tale. Well, that's fine if you want to believe that. Okay, go ahead. Nobody's going to judge you at all. The problem with that is that if you disagree with that notion, then you kind of like spit in the face of all of our founding documents, because that was the authority that our founders gave as the rights. And if you look in the 1770s, the major break in a pattern of humanity came during this time, during the Enlightenment. Before then, people thought that kings had divine right to rule. Oh man, the king, whatever he says is true. Or that your rights were privileges somehow granted to you by the king and the nobility. Well, Locke turned this entire argument on its head and said free men and women, their rights came from the Creator. It's in our founding documents. It's in the Declaration of Independence. Okay? It's in all of our founding documents if you just simply go and read them. But from one of my favorite documents comes the acknowledgement of this, and this is called the Declaration of Causes and Necessity for Taking Up Arms. And this was in July of 1775, so 1 year before the Declaration of Independence, and I'll give you a direct quote from that. It says, "The arms we have been compelled by our enemies to assume, we will, in defiance of every hazard, with unabating firmness and perseverance, employ for the preservation of our liberties, being with one mind resolved to die free men rather than to live as slaves." And in this document, an appeal to the Creator is given, just like Locke said in his second treatise on government. This flag is amazing for many reasons. It was the calling card of the American Revolution. It's where the colonists drew their strength from to a large degree. It represented and symbolized the ire and the resistance of the colonists. And what ire is it's extreme agitation and open anger against something. This goes beyond raising up a little, stake in a sign that says, "Don't piss on my shoes and tell me it's raining." This is absolutely unjust. We are in open rebellion phase at this point. So those are the symbols of the American Revolution, the three most popular. It's not an exhaustive list. There's many more in there. So why did this video happen today? Why do I want you to draw connections to the past from it? Well, for a lot of reasons. Because the egregious acts by Parliament and the Crown and 240 years ago, I guess you could say that today that there are a lot, in many ways, worse that we have to endure as citizens of the United States of America today. They're every bit as bad, and some people would say they're even worse. Times change, but people don't. And I think that you need to realize that the most important thing to learn from our history is that there were people that were willing to stand up and say, you know what? This is not right. And our founding fathers, they tried every single method before it came to violence. They tried every method and said, look, we're going to petition the king. We're going to petition Parliament. And after all of their petitions went unheeded, unanswered, they had one appeal left. What do we want our future to look like? What if we lose as much freedom in the next 15 years as we have in the last 15 or more years, obviously? That's a tough question. So the past is every bit as relevant to the future as it is now. We have to think about what our values are as a country. What is the purpose of a constitutional republic? What happens when government operates outside of those boundaries? And furthermore, if it is a government of the people, okay, we the people, in order to form more, all that preamble to the Constitution, we're it. We are the bulwark of freedom. And we have a lot of important choices to make in the future and in the very near future as well. So I ask that you look to the past for wisdom, and I also ask that you really question yourself, do you know your history of this country? This is Reid Henrichs of Valor Ridge reminding you, the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others. We'll see you on the ridge.